Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Drew Ramsey. Welcome back to the Brainfood vlog. We had a little technical issue trying to get our guest Naidoo on here, and so we're going to wait for a few. I'm sorry we've had this little technical issue getting Naidoo on here, but we've gathered a bunch of you again, and we're going to get on here to talk about nutritional psychiatry because there's only a couple of us in the world, and nutritional psychiatry applies to you all. It applies to you as clinicians, because you're seeing patients all the time, and we know what you say matters to patients, and also to you as healthcare providers, as I was saying a moment ago. And so hopefully we're going to have one of the only nutritional psychiatrists in the world, really the only, I think, academic sort of appointed nutritional psychiatrist is Naidoo, with the title Nutritional Psychiatry right up there in her title, which is just great, at Harvard. And she's trying to join us now to see if we can get her on to talk about nutritional psychiatry and to share with us really all of some of the new science. She has a new book coming out. But I wanted to talk also with you all, because when we think about prevention and we think about nutritional psychiatry, I think about my colleagues in medicine, because as I was saying earlier, you all are just at such risk for mental health conditions. We all are. And so we want to get on here to give you all of her tips and also talk about some of her journey being a nutritional psychiatrist, really being one of the leaders in this field. Most folks know, if you're interested in this field, also Felice Jackin, the Mood and Food Center in Australia is just a really great hub. And so, if you can rejoin and ask to join us, we can get you on here and tell everybody a little bit more about nutritional psychiatry. And so I saw a question. Let's give a minute. I'm so sorry about this. We're all kind of new at this, but there was a question about foods for sleep, and kind of my general tips and ideas about this revolve around. Sorry, I'm getting this is my clinical phone. I'm getting lots of texts from patients. Really, thinking about how this can apply to you, right, in a regular way, and then how do we think about sleep and food. And so that's timing of meals. We're bad in medicine. We tend to really eat late and eat right before we go to bed, which is not the most helpful things. There we go. Oh, goodness. All right, she's going to join us right now. I just found her. Thank you, everybody, for hanging on. And it looks like, I just accepted you into the call, so hopefully you can join us. All right, I just accepted you to come into the call. And it says we're waiting for you. So see if there's something for you to click. And I know I appreciate these. So we're waiting for Uma. Oh, and there we go. All right. Hi there.
Hi. This only took like about 10 minutes, but
everybody, welcome.
Okay.
Naidoo. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much for being patient and bearing with us. And it's going to be worth it, because and I are two of a handful of nutritional psychiatrists in the world. And this is a new movement where we're thinking about food and mental health. So welcome to Medscape, to the Brainfood blog. It's such a pleasure to see you. And I was wondering if you could just share with everybody just a little bit about who you are and what you do and what nutritional psychiatry is.
Thanks, Drew. I should actually be asking you the question, but thank you so much, everyone, for your patience, and Drew for being so nice. For some reason, it wouldn't let me in, so I was seeing all these great comments and I couldn't get it. But that's the world we live in. So thank you for having me. You're right. There are a few of us who sort of are doing this work, but I think many of us think about it. And, nutritional psychiatry is really the use of nutrition and nutrients to help people feel better emotionally. And my background is that I love food and have studied nutrition and went to culinary school. And this came together for me in a very organic way without any planning. to be able to start a center at Mass General and see patients who really want to use this as an additional way to feel better. And I think that you do the same thing, Drew, and have been doing it for a while as well, but in your practice in New York. So.
Yeah, and Uma, I want to hear about you as a doctor and also as a chef, but I want you to maybe take us all back to that moment where you have these two skill sets, where you're a trained psychiatrist and you're also, I think, specialty trained. I mean, you have a lot of training as a psychiatrist, and
I get bored easily, Drew.
Well, and then you add on culinary school. And you're sitting with patients. Were you already thinking about food, or did you put those things together? How did that happen where you're finally sitting with the patient and you realize you want to talk to them about food?
It goes back to sort of residency where I was, again, I'd love to say it was a grand plan, but it wasn't. Most importantly, I was sitting with a patient and I had become sort of feeling that I wanted to be more responsible as I was prescribing medications as a young resident. And a patient came into my office in my community clinic in Boston. And our favorite coffee around Boston is Dunkin' Donuts. And he had this really large cup and he was complaining bitterly about the fact that, because of the medication I prescribed and SSRI, he had gained weight in about 3 weeks. And number one, I hadn't seen that before. I was a junior resident. And I looked at the cup of coffee and I said, gee, for some so the penny dropped for me. And I just said, well, how much what did you put in that? And it turned out to be more than a quarter cup of cream, because it's 20 ounces, right? And about 8 sugars. So from that point, there was something that shifted in me about really, wanting to understand that there was an interaction if someone is going to be taking a medication, also how they ate, their lifestyle, exercise, movement, whatever they were doing really counted. And that that grew in me. And separately to that, I just loved food and came from a family that, where food is very central, and didn't know how to cook initially. So as I learned to cook and really began to use it, especially in residency, as my time for mindfulness in the evening, I decided, well, I want to learn more. And it really wasn't, I wasn't trying to put the three things together, but that's how it happened.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, a similar thing for me. Mine was in community psychiatry, and it's when the atypicals came out. And patients were doing better symptomatically, and you felt like good. Wow, you're not
right.
suicidal. The voices are gone, but
Exactly.
individuals were gaining so much weight, and it was one of these. I wanted better skills and better tools. So when you meet with patients, and I kind of want to hear, particularly because Medscape, our community, is really a lot of healthcare providers around the world. We have people, saying hello from all over the world, and thanks everybody for the hearts and for all the shout outs. Romania somehow popped out, and I want to hear your thoughts on.
I think those are for you, Drew. They're not for me, because I'm not.
I think that those are certainly for you, Uma. And so I want you to tell us a little bit about how you evaluate a patient, particularly what you've seen in healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, residents, medical students. What do we struggle with, food-wise?
Right. So I think if you're asking how we evaluate is, if I understood that correctly, I think the whole piece is that in our medical education, proper nutrition education is missing. So doctors are expected to counsel individuals, whether it's for medical reasons or mental health reasons, on all sorts of medications and a diet for hypertension or cholesterol, but we're really not taught the tools around that. And really, patients look to us for that. So I start off with, I'm a trained consultation liaison psychiatrist, so that, I enjoy working with other specialties and kind of bringing complex cases together. So I start off with, the basic tools of proper history and really understanding what's going on. And it's interesting, Drew, I'm sure you've seen this, and I'd be curious to hear that from you as well. Sometimes individuals are sent to me for symptoms of panic and anxiety, but as I uncover the history, they actually have significant bowel symptoms and gut symptoms and maybe even irritable bowel syndrome. And it's presenting, when you take the history and you kind of reverse engineer all the information, you realize that their diet changed for some reason. It was a job, new job, stress, eating differently, eating processed and fast foods. But they end up in my office, with panic. And I think what's really interesting to me is how do we then start to work with individuals to eat a healthy whole foods diet and add back the nutrients that they need in order to slowly reverse those symptoms. And I've even had people who subsequently came back and said, I didn't tell you about my rash that I had on my leg because you're the psychiatrist, but that got better too, doc. So, it's I'm not saying it's a cure for everything, but I do think that link from gut inflammation to brain inflammation and symptoms is something I've definitely seen.
Yeah, and that's that connection I think is new for us, and diet provides such a powerful tool for us. It also seems that it's the types of questions maybe we didn't ask in mental health, and I love the way you describe kind of reverse engineering it. That if you're really up on the literature and you're a clinician, you're asking about gut health these days. You're asking about food because you're curious about microbiome, and
Exactly.
there are lots of ways to test that and run tests, but a really easy way to get a lot of information about someone's nutritional status and gut health is simply, that skill we all have, just taking a good history, as you said.
I think it does start there from medical school days, but I think you also make an excellent point. Because we're thinking of the microbiome, it's a very personalized plan for each individual because their microbiome is unique. So one person, my 10 o'clock patient may not have the same does not have the same microbiome as my 11 o'clock patient, and they're not the same as mine. So, stemming from that, I've really gone from a more generalized direction initially as I was building things in the clinic to a very personalized approach of uncovering what someone is struggling with in particular beyond just the medications. And some people, are not on medications, also want to just embrace feeling better through the use of healthy whole foods and, the sort of the foods that we've been discussing. And I see you discussing all the time too.
Well, and I'm curious, part of also what's happened with food and why maybe we need some psychiatrists to get involved and mental health professionals is that it feels like things have gotten really, I'm going to say, dysregulated and extreme.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, kind of in your view as a psychiatrist, how you feel it's appropriate for psychiatrists to talk about food in terms of maybe shifting more than just the nutrients, but also our attitudes about how we nourish ourselves.
Well, thank you for asking that, Drew, because, I've written a book, and I did not think that I would find the information that I did. I looked at probably 700 references, 550 of which or more in the book. So I would say with great respect to the psychiatric and medical community that there is a very strong evidence base behind this. And I say that with understanding through the lens of nutrition and nutritional science that if I say this study proves this today, I can also find at least one study that disproves that. So it's about interpreting it appropriately for patients and for other clinicians and helping them understand the good. For example, omega-3s, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a toxic reaction to that. So if there's something that you can use that could target depression and anxiety, and you can do that through food, my attitude is why not? Obviously, I want to know about allergies and I want to understand things you've reacted, or if you have a special diet, maybe you don't consume fish. So it's, so I think those factors are important. So from the wider community that maybe it was more of a soft science, I would just say that more of it should be included in our dialogue with patients and, asking about symptoms, asking about foods that they eat, a general diet, talking about a Mediterranean eating pattern. All of those things, I think that are things that we can incorporate in our questions, depending on your degree of comfort.
Thank you for that. Now, Uma, you do have a great book. I mean, there really haven't been a lot of nutritional psychiatry books come out, and so I'm excited that your book, that This Is Your Brain on Food, is coming out here just in a few weeks, and so I'm sure you've been eating a lot of our favorite brain food, dark chocolate, to cope with all of the realities of a book launch.
But you know this well, Drew. It's very new to me because it's my first book. But you're a well-known author, and yes, so you know the different things that happen. But I learned an interesting fact. It turns out that through the way that that cacao is processed, it's also fermented.
Yeah, I
So it
learned that
turns out
too. Isn't that crazy? It's like,
it's exactly, it's a great, food for your guts. I'm like, I think I can have more chocolate. So
I love the
just
dark
a very
chocolate. Like
dark kind.
right, where
Yeah,
it's like plant-based foods are trending. It's a plant-based food. Fermented foods are
exactly.
trending. It's a fermented food.
Fermented
It's
food.
like, and it's good for
Exactly.
your brain. So
Exactly.
tell us about your book and about some of the recommendations you have, because there are a lot of
Sure.
amazing brains watching right now. And we
Well,
all know everyone in our field can do a better job in how we take care of ourselves. So what tips do you
sure.
have for us from your book?
Sure. Thank you. And I think, as clinicians, taking care of ourselves means that we can take care of others, right? So what I basically did is introduce people to sort of the first chapter is called the gut-brain romance, because I kind of build out how everything is connected, which people on this Instagram would already know. And then we break it down into the different disorders. And what I tried to do is make it simple, so that if, say, you're picking up the book because you feel you want to find out about symptoms of depression, you can look at that chapter. Or if you want to look at the chapter on, say, OCD, you can go to that. There's obviously some overlap. And at the end of each chapter, we have foods to, I use the royal we. I have foods that you can embrace and foods you should avoid. And then at the end, we have a small recipe chapter to match the different disorders and foods that we've outlined. And I was, they're really straightforward recipes, because this is really about getting people in the kitchen and trying to encourage healthy whole foods that you can do, because we know that studies have shown that when you eat out, you naturally eat more calories. This has been shown. And secondly, when you prepare food at home, even if you're not following a diet, you still consume pure calories. So I think that's helpful for us to know, especially during this time when more people are preparing food at home. So hopefully the recipes are things that people can do easily and incorporate in their diet to kind of match the chapters.
Are there a few, as you look through the data of the different disorders, were there certain foods that stuck out that for sure we should be eating more of for our brain health?
Absolutely. So, the I guess the one, I love spices, and the one spice that stuck out consistently was turmeric with a pinch of black pepper, because the piperine in the black pepper enhances by a very large percentage the curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric. So that's sort of, if you don't cook with it, put it in a smoothie or put it in a soup, but it's worth having.
I
And
love turmeric. I grow it. Why is there so much controversy around the turmeric data? Because you see
but
good studies, and then you see studies when people say turmeric's not absorbed, and then the pepper trick I learned, and then there's
mhm.
some other. Is there?
Here's what I would say to that. Culturally, Indians in India have been consuming turmeric for eons, and not and they eat much more than the recommendations, which is, in the book we talk about it. We broke it down to like a quarter teaspoon a day with a pinch of black pepper. At the very least, if you do nothing else, that's one thing you can do. It's not the only thing, obviously, but there really isn't data that has come out of India to show that it has impacted people in a negative way. It's been something that has been used in several cultures. I think going back to the nutritional work, you often have studies that prove and disprove. You should not, for example, use turmeric in an IV. That's not appropriate. It will kill you. But food, or some of my patients do take a supplement, but I try and encourage it through food. And then I go to the basic whole foods. The beans, the greens, the legumes, the omega-3s, all the stuff that builds back fiber, because we understand that you can eat any type of food that's healthy, or say a lean protein, but the fiber actually comes from the fruits and vegetables. So the more biodiversity that you eat every day, and you speak to this all the time, Drew, with the lovely vegetables and stuff that you probably grow, the more that you include in your diet, the better off you are. And the better off your gut is. So those basic things, lean proteins, good, we break down some spices in the book, and, kind of several other categories of food. But those are sort of some basic take homes. I think the issue is that people don't always follow that. And,
What,
that's
what are a couple?
some of the difficult.
Yeah, well, I want to hear your tricks for that, because you're a clinician that helps people change their lives and change their behavior and their food. So I want to hear kind of two questions, a little two for question here of how do you nudge people, especially, I don't know, like middle-aged doctors? Let's take me, for example, and all of my bad food habits. How do you nudge people to change? And then I want to hear a couple of the favorite recipes from your new book.
Sure.
And for
It's
everybody tuning in, hang on, lots of people tuning in. We had some technical problems. Sorry about that. This is Naidoo. Uma is one of the few real nutritional psychiatrists in the world. She's at Harvard University. She's a consult liaison, specialty trained psychiatrist. She has a new book coming out. This is Your Brain on Food. It's up on Amazon. Please consider giving it a pre-order and giving her a comment. She's just a real leader in our field. And I've just asked her for top tips and for recipes. But yeah, tell us, how do you change people, doctors and health providers, and what are your favorite recipes for us?
Sure. So I think when I'm working with a patient, I find that if there's even a simple tip that they start to change. Take my patient who was really struggling at work, someone who's diabetic and really not eating healthy foods, and her Dexcom monitor would beep all the time at work, and she was eating unhealthy snacks. And she took a step back, worked with me, and we figured out a way that she would do proper grocery shopping, at least on one day of the week, organize her meals, but actually add back healthy whole foods. It sounds really simplistic, but that made a huge difference to how she began eating, because she was no longer going to the vending machine or running to the cafeteria when she was hypoglycemic, and she's actively diabetic. And over time, she lost weight, required less insulin, and really by embracing a basic healthy whole foods diet, involving things, and I really believe in a holistic approach that involves an integration in mental health. So it's almost like it's a functional approach to psychiatry. So looking for a root cause. So rather than just saying, I'm going to give you sertraline to treat the anxiety, we worked on a different plan, which included mindfulness, bringing back exercise in some form, improving her sleep, and planning her meals. So sometimes it's a simple thing, but when a person experiences some positive result from it, that's when, in my experience, that's when they change that habit and they start to embrace a different direction. And honestly, when someone is not following it, it's hard to bring them along. And sometimes it's just changing one thing that makes such a big difference. In terms of my favorite recipes, I am a big fan of cauliflower, and I think you could do this with. We do the same recipe with a piece of salmon. We do it with chicken breast, but I love it, and this actually isn't in the book. But my favorite thing is
it is exclusive recipe. All right, you're getting it.
So my favorite thing. My favorite thing is to use a cauliflower steak, but actually mix my, the spices I would use for tandoori chicken for someone else in my family, or for chicken tikka, and blend them, but use it and also make the marinade using, probiotic-rich yogurt, and then actually roast the cauliflower steak. And so you can do the same thing with chicken or salmon or whatever you want to switch out. But it's really because the flavors, right? The spices have no salt added, they have no calories involved, and they're very easy to change up an entire dish. And that's sort of what I want people to try to do, is really make it fun and delicious and enjoy it.
I had a reader who came to a book signing, and then she mailed me a little bag of curry, pretty big bag, that she made herself, fresh curry, which no one had ever made for me. It was like, and it's one of the things you have, and you're not used to using so much.
Yeah.
So the other day, I got some cauliflower. I put it in
you did the same thing.
Little bit of water in the bottom to kind of steam it, and I just dumped a couple of tablespoons of this curry powder on there and a little bit of coconut oil.
Right.
And it blew my mind, Uma. It was so
I'm so
good.
glad you tried that. That is awesome. So what you said is so fascinating, Drew, because in Indian households, a grandmother or family member mixes the blend of spice, right? And you can buy these ingredients and put it together, and we call it masala. And so it just varies, just like my grandmother's chai is different from someone else's. It's slight variations, but they really boost the flavor of whether it's your tea or whether it's, your food. And it changes it up so that if you're trying to eat healthy, it's a way to embrace new flavors and make fun and enjoy the food, because no one wants to eat this, chicken and broccoli every single day. And spices is a way to keep it healthy, but just make it more interesting.
Uma, we've got a few questions that I wanted to just take kind of a rapid round to
Sure.
include some of all you all who are watching. So Tess has a question. She said, generation of girls who follow the fruitarian trend, which I think is eating a lot of fruit. There's all this kind of like anger about sugar. Sugar's a toxin. Sugar's like the cause of all bad problems in healthcare. And we're told to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. Where do you fall on
Right.
fruit?
So I think with fruit, the fact, it depends, I try not to fall into a particular dietary pattern, because the individuals who come to me may eat anything,
Because we're
and I have to
nutritional
have,
psychiatrists,
exactly, I've got to be able
like,
to, exactly, I've got to be able to embrace what they eat. So I think that fruit in moderation, unless you have some sort of disorder where you cannot break down sort of the carbohydrates in the fruit, you should at least eat some healthy servings. And the best fruits are the berries, and we know that from the science. So, if someone is a fruitarian, then, I think that that's a lifestyle that they've chosen. But for us, I would say, whether you're baking or cooking or having dessert, include that in your healthy servings for the day. Don't overeat anything. You should, cherries on season, you shouldn't be eating a pound of them. But
right.
if you have the serving size, you should be good, because
Once
the
a
health
year when they're in
benefits.
season and you're in like Michigan, you can have a pound of them. But
Exactly.
another couple of there's what do you do when people we got to come out of this pseudoscience, the connection between food and mental health? And I also people ask a lot, what do our colleagues think? Some
Sure.
people worry this means, oh, are you guys saying you can like eat your way out of bipolar disorder? What do you
No.
say to those kind of comments that there's not science
Sure.
behind this?
Sure. So this was, a discussion, and I usually preface it by saying this is not a prescription, and I've heard you say that, Drew, as well. This is not a prescription, and in Boston we have when we're in call in the emergency room at Mass General, the call you do not want to get is that someone is on the Tobin Bridge, because that person is suicidal, or they have bipolar disorder and they think they can fly. I know I'm generalizing this largely, but I'm trying to make a point here. And this is, food is not the intervention for that. So we are not saying give up your medications and eat cauliflower or eat spinach, or eat turmeric or whatever it is. What we're saying is that these are ways that you can feel better through the use of food. And I have treated people who have been stabilized from severe conditions post-hospitalization and have incorporated this as tools to feel better, and that's totally appropriate.
It's also
But I would
sorry to
never
interrupt you,
say,
but I think it's so
yeah,
interesting in our
yeah.
field that we do meet people when they're on the bridge, so to speak. And what's also interesting is now one of the most interesting recent studies on bipolar disorder, which I mentioned a number of times on this, was this great study out of Johns Hopkins and Shepherd Pratt of giving probiotic during mania. And I think it's where we've made the specific, just because that's not the moment, I feel like we also preface that. We wouldn't be like prescribing kale when someone's, in a manic episode. But it's also
Exactly.
like, but gosh, we wouldn't like leave it out of the whole treatment plan, would we? Would we? And it's
Exactly.
like, well, yeah, we have. We haven't said that
We
your
have
quality
until
of
now.
life with bipolar disorder is going to be better.
Exactly. Well, to think about whether it's post cardiac surgery or post a manic episode, and look at the food that we serve in our hospitals.
My dad
So
had quadruple bypass. I
right,
remember he like comes out and
exactly.
it's like, would you like some hydrogenated canola oil on a roll
Right.
with some jelly for your
Exactly.
heart?
So we have to probably examine ourselves a little bit as well. But you have to be right. It's not kale or cauliflower something for that acute episode. But here's the other thing as well. Many people don't fall into our diagnostic categories perfectly, and some people are really struggling, but they don't meet a criteria for a certain diagnosis, and they really want to feel better. They really want to embrace healthy eating or means to feel emotionally safe. They're not suicidal, they're not manic, they're not psychotic, but they want to feel better. And, in a safe way, if you can guide them through those principles, I think it's okay. But we would never say, give up your medication and eat something else, But I think it could be incorporated into our larger treatment plan, like you're saying. So.
Uma, thank you. Now, one last question. There have been a lot of mention of burritos in the comments. I'm not sure why. It's like the grand unconscious speaking to us about this, amazing food and food group. I think a lot of us in healthcare, it's something we grab. So I guess I'd like your prescription for a brain food burrito.
Uh-huh.
And then again, everyone who's been watching, this is Naidoo. She is a psychiatrist at Harvard University. She is a nutritional psychiatrist. She has a book coming out. This is Your Brain on Food, just coming out in a few weeks. Please check it out. It's up on Amazon and all places. And please check out Uma's other work. But Uma, can you help us out? Because I do love a burrito. And so what can you prescribe us all a healthy one before we go back to work?
Sure. So, it depends on if you're making it at home, but you want to choose the right wrap. Obviously, a way to bring whole grains in. I don't think I need to tell you that. But here's my trick. I love cauliflower rice. And if you can, I have made some Indian dishes and other dishes and split the amount of rice I would normally do with an equal amount of cauliflower rice, and you really don't tell the difference with spices. So if you add a ton of veggies in there, right, you're good for that, or whatever lean protein you'd like. Avocado for the healthy fat, if you'd like, put on top. Some people don't put it inside. But the biggest thing is the rice, right? That kind of holds it together. I think that cauliflower has worked very well. And now you get it frozen. And, I say to my patients, try to get any frozen vegetables without the sugar, added salt or syrup in it, and leave the sauce aside, but steam it and use it. And cauliflower would work well for that. And I would add tons of veggies in there and whatever else. And your sauce. Then you're good.
That's good. All right. So swap out the rice, half the rice for cauliflower. Use a whole grain wrap. Lots of veggies. Don't forget the avocado. And Dr. Naidoo is going to let you choose your protein, folks. I want you to choose wild salmon, but you can get your choice. She's a better doctor than I am. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please check out Dr. Naidoo's book. Uma, and also your handle on Instagram. How can everybody follow you?
I'm at Dr. Uma Naidoo, so at DrUmaNaidoo.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm Dr. Drew Ramsey, Drew Ramsey, MD. Thanks again for tuning into another edition of the Brain Food Blog with one of the original brain foodies, Dr. Uma Naidoo. Thank you so much for this special episode, Uma, and I'll see everybody next week.
Thanks so much, Drew. Take care.